Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome in to Deal Evaluation. We're going to be underwriting a lot of deals. So, thank you so much if you guys have been watching these and you've been learning and been implementing this stuff. So, we really like doing these. I have Terry here with me. If you guys haven't met Terry, he's my brother. We both have appraisal background experience. So, underwriting deals is kind of was like our original forte before we got into real estate investing. So, doing like a real big deep dive into all the different things you guys could expect when it comes to underwriting deals is what we're going to be going over today. So by the time we finish, you will understand how to underwrite creative deals, and you'll also understand how to underwrite cash deals. We have to underwrite both. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring Mr. Terry. Terry, give everybody a little bit of background of your experience of like underwriting deals.
Yeah. So, like as Matt was saying earlier, I think our introduction to real estate was through our mom. She had a real estate company back in South Carolina, an appraisal company back in South Carolina. And me and Matt, of course, started working under her and with the company a long time ago, whether it was doing, just inspections or understanding exactly how to gauge markets. And then, of course, we did that for a really long time. I know Matt ended up branching out, coming out here. And starting his own path. And for me, I stayed behind and I ran the South Carolina appraisal company. Really just understanding how to, look at properties, understanding exactly where, maybe a property needs some rehab to bring it top of the market, understanding the condition of a home and kind of labeling that. So yeah, I would say comping and understanding exactly, how to pull and what to look for, lot size, GLA, bedroom, bath count, all that good stuff. We've been doing it long before we were ever kind of investors.
100%. So what we're going to share with you guys here today is hopefully going to shorten that whole learning curve, and you're not going to need to do years and years of learning to understand the basics behind this. I'm going to share some formulas with you guys here today that, number one, will help you underwrite cash deals faster. It'll help you understand why a creative deal is good or bad, right? Because there is such a thing. And then ultimately help you guys get through these properties. I feel like one of the biggest time sucks that we have as investors is trying to figure out, do we even have a deal? Where does our numbers need to be? Has everyone ever felt that way? You have an opportunity, but you're like, where do I even need to be on price? Or where do I need to be on terms? We're going to hopefully help you guys weed through that so you can look at deals faster so you can forward, right? We want to have conversations and feel confident moving forward. So that's what we're going to be doing here today. So as we kind of dive into this, guys, if you missed any of our previous masterminds, or maybe not masterminds, but master classes, go to this link. I worked for quite a few hours yesterday to make sure this was possible, but I basically put a page together so you guys can sign up and get access to all the previous masterclass recordings. So that was lead gen, that was creative deal structuring, that was foreclosures, and that was last weekend's deal negotiations. In this recording from today, you won't need to go to the raw recording link. If you guys are like, Matt said he was going to give me the 8 options for foreclosure, he said we're going to have like this flow chart. It'll all be in here. So every week we'll add the previous week's masterclass as well as the resources that we discuss. So we have some things that we'll discuss here today. I think it's going to be relevant for underwriting, and guess what? You're going to find it here. So please, if you want the previous recordings, go to Masterclass Pass. As always, this is free. We don't charge a dime for this stuff. We just hope that this information hits you guys in a place where you're going to be able to do more deals. And as you do more deals, there is a good chance that we can do some together. So super excited for that. So without further ado, I want to look first at discussing the different ways that we go about underwriting properties. Okay, so here was the sheet that we shared. You guys should have been able to copy and paste these. I will zoom in so you guys can see. This first deal off Euclid was one that we did. That's why I was like, okay, well, I think this would be helpful for you guys to look at why this one's the deal for us. We just got this contract last week, so we want to share that one with you guys. Okay, this one is another property. What's our cash offer? And another one was a creative. So we're going to look at these first. But as we kind of dive into this, I'm going to give you guys the rules that we try to abide by. So Terry, what do we look at whenever we go in and look at a creative deal? What's the first thing we typically check out?
The number one thing is learning exactly how much month to month the property costs. So your monthly PITI, of course, understanding that. And it always kind of lumps into, we always call it mortgage information, or maybe you've heard us in the past say we sent out an email template asking for, some mortgage information when it comes to PITI, your balance, what percentage the loan is, what your interest rate, and stuff like that. So really what we're trying to know, the reason why PITI is the most important part of it all is because we want to see exactly if the property will cash flow or not.
100%. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this up and we're going to look at this together, guys. So the property off of 212 West Euclid Avenue in Phoenix. So like what Terry's saying is what's very important. The reason why we send them a templated email, right? We send them that, hey, well, great. Look, I don't know if subject to is going to be the right fit or not, but either way, if I can get some more information about the property and the debt that's in place, I will be able to come up with an offer for you. It's the reason why we can't just send them a blind offer. Can't tell you how many investors out there and people who are trying to do subject to deals just send an offer, send a LOI, not even knowing what the underlying debt is or how the debt's structured, or is there HOA, or is there solar panels or a water softener? We got to know what it currently costs per month to own a property, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, when you're talking a little bit, learning about what kind of debt's on the home, I'll give you a little story. So we're working on a property here in North Carolina, and our offer is, of course, to we're really interested in the property. The property cash flows, but we found out they had about $10,000 in arrears, right? And our original offer was going to be around $7,000 down, $6,000 to agent. Well, now we had to come up with a little more creative offer to where we're able to come in and pay the arrears up, but we're not going to have that much money to give the agent as well. So, we've had these conversations and stuff. And of course, learning about the arrears is very crucial to learning exactly what your entry fee needs to be. But there's another guy that we're kind of a bid more against a little bit, but he doesn't understand how to structure creative. You can tell he maybe is a little new to it. So his offer looks a little bit better, right? $8,000 down to the seller, $6,000 down to the agent, and everything. It looks great, right? But I'm having to have a conversation with the agent and go, well, he never asked you about the arrears. He never asked you about the lien, the HVAC lien that's on the home. And so I'm trying to teach the agent how these things are the most crucial part about the whole entire transaction, right? And
Right.
I would and his offer is clearly going to look better, but what's going to happen with that offer is it goes under contract. They might accept it. Next thing you know, they realize that there is arrears, because maybe, like I said, they might be a little bit newer to the game. They waste 20, 30 days of this person's life to try to get this deal moved. And
Right.
guess what? When they circle back to us, now instead of at $10,000 in arrears, it's now $12,000 in arrears. So it's one of those things to where
It comes down to your cash at close, right? Because what Terry is saying is this other offer is saying, hey, we're going to give you $8,000 down, and I'm going to pay your agent commission to $6,000. That's total 14. Well, guess what? You're not taking consideration. You're going to have to pay the 10,000 in arrears, so it's not 14, it's 24, right? So no matter what, that's going to come to pass. That's going to be a thing, and it's important. What we're going to teach you guys here today on this training, if you strap in and you're here to take notes, this is how you underwrite and do these deals. Okay. If you ever feel like someone is going to be outbidding you, don't be discouraged, because any money that they try to come to the table with more than yours, especially if it's a significant amount, they're probably going to have to cancel. Okay. It's like knowing that I could wholesale a deal for 185 and I have to have it under contract. I have an offer out for 175. And this other agent says, well, I got an offer for 183. And they're like, okay, good luck, dude. That person's going to get a 2K assignment. Maybe they're probably going to cancel. Same thing with creative. If they go outside of our parameters and the rules that we talk about here, 9 times out of 10, they're going to cancel and they come right back around. So you can be confident in your numbers. All right. Susan said, I used to get annoyed when the students wouldn't do the homework. That's okay. It was in one of the Facebook posts. So if you guys aren't checking the Facebook group, No Fluff Real Estate with Matt Beard, I'm trying to at least post every single day for you guys, just something of value. So you can go in and maybe it's the recordings. Like yesterday, it was the homework. I just want to make sure that, you guys are getting that. So when I tag everyone, I promise you it's not to be annoying. I try to just make sure you guys are up to date on everything that's happening. So let's pull this up here. So Euclid Avenue, what is our creative offer? So 212 West Euclid Avenue, Phoenix. We knew this was going to be one of the deals where we were doing our agent outreach, as we always do. And I can't remember. I think Harvey actually called this one for Steven and Sarah and had a conversation with the agent, right?
Yeah. So off market, had a conversation. I think it was for a completely different home. And of course, with them doing the kind of the cash outreach that they're doing, looking for stuff that needs some TLC, and the agent kind of presented them with this opportunity to where the seller's looking for a couple different options. He might put it on market, might just, just go down the listing route, might want to do a cash deal. So we looked at it on the first scope of, okay, where would our cash numbers be right before we learned anything about the property and about the debt? Most of the time, if something needs a little bit of work, then we kind of come together with our cash number. And our cash number on this one was actually, I think, around 140 or so. So then we went back to the agent. We told them, hey, where we needed to be. On the cash side of things, he goes, well, that's clearly not going to work because he actually has debt on the property. I think it was like 170 something thousand.
207.
Yeah, 200. Okay.
Yeah.
How much he owes.
Yep. So with this one, it was an interesting scenario. And the reason why I bring this up is because there's two different ways that we find these properties, right? One we call low equity listings, right? Okay. So that's definitely one method is we call low equity listings, and these are on market, right? So when they say listings, that means it's on market. Well, this particular deal was a low equity off market. How do we find that? Is because we do the other method, right? The cash cowboy. We call for agent relationship. Okay. They kind of go hand in hand. But whenever the agent didn't have anything that we could potentially do with cash, then it's always like, okay, well, maybe we could provide a creative solution. This particular one, he was like, yeah, I have a property you guys can put an offer on. And it just so happened to, have what we would consider low equity in the as is state. Because if you look at Euclid Avenue, this property, ARV, which is after repair value, is worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $380,000. The problem is the reason why they're not going to get $380,000 is this big thing down here. For the most part, we buy on-market creative deals that are move-in ready. They don't need a ton of repairs. This property does, right? It has some drywall work, it has some paint, it has some stuff to do in the kitchen, exterior work, landscaping. And that's me being a little bit higher on the spectrum at 35 to 40 grand. But as you can see, if I was going to buy this with cash and hope to wholesale this cash deal, that was what Terry was saying. Is like we need to be around 240. So that's kind of where we let in at. Tell you how we got those numbers too. But first and foremost, I'm going to show you how we structured this thing on creative. All right. So the first thing that we look at when we get the numbers and we realize that, okay, they do have debt in place. I can't just magically come up $30,000 from my cash offer just because they owe $30,000 more than what I'm offering. I can't. So I got to figure out what I would actually be able to do with this property, which is the question that you got to ask yourself always when you're buying creative deal. You're buying a little business. I've said this before. So you're buying a little business. Like, what could I potentially do with it? So the first thing that I'm going to look at when it comes to underwriting this deal is what is long-term rent. This is step one. All right. I'm going to put here step one. All right. What is long-term rents? So this particular property, Terry, what do we have long-term rents at?
So it's around 2,000, 2,100.
Okay, so let's just do the low end of that and just say long-term rent is $2,000.
Yep.
Okay, per month. Well, all right. Well, if I know PITI is $1,650 and the long-term rent's for $2,000, I'm off to a good place, especially being that it's in Phoenix, Arizona. People will pay a premium for properties here, just how it is. Outside of that, say, okay, well, if I know the long-term rents is $2,000, then that's a positive. The more things I could do with this property, the better, right? Next thing I'll look at is other potential exits, right? So normally, I'll tell you guys a little trick. This one has no HOA. This is all the debt that you guys needed to know on this particular property because there is no HOA, no solar, no anything like that, right? It's just these things. So when we're looking at that, I say, okay, I know for sure the only thing that's going to cost me every month to own this property is $1,650, right? Obviously outside of utilities if I'm going to keep it to rent, but that's where we're at. So number one, if I find something that long-term rents, we're in a really good place because the next thing that I'll look at is step two. Could this be a midterm rental, right? And in my opinion, go ahead.
I'll always go. So I always comp for long-term rental, and then I go STR next. Is kind of what I look at. Now with this one being in the neighborhood and stuff, probably not a great STR, but I think with this one having no HOA, you have a lot of different options. I would say that kind of the area and the neighborhood pad split is probably its highest and best for sure. And I think you're going to kind of get into that stuff, but you kind of go through a checklist. I always tell people, I always start out at long-term rental, and then I go to the short-term rental, Airbnb, Verbo type stuff, right?
Mhm.
And then I look at the midterm rental stuff. And then, of course, you could look at pad split. And then the last case scenario is your wrap scenario. So
100%.
just kind of going through the list.
You got it. Exactly. So, but the first one Terry was saying there was we were looking at what else could we potentially do with this property. And one of those things was, all right, well, let's see what we can do for a short-term rental. So if I go back and present my screen. So again, I'm going slow for you guys so that way you can, it's like working out, right? You go slow, then you go smooth, then you go fast, right? So you start slow. Don't feel like you got to do it as fast as we do. Like, how do you get to the point? Like, we can underwrite a deal now on creative probably in like 2 minutes, maybe less, right? But it's just because you do it slow in the beginning until you get your repetitions in, and that's the idea behind the homework. So I'm going to open up a couple tabs, but I'm going to take this address, and if I'm looking at Airbnb, here's my neighborhood. I'll look on the maps. I love looking at the map to kind of see where we're at in the area. Terry, do you do that too?
I love it. I'm a big map guy anyway, but knowing your area is crucial to highest to best.
Yeah.
And
So
stuff.
it's like,
So
what other properties are around? Am I around residential or am I like close to Los Dos Molinos, right? Right? Am I fronting commercial or am I fronting a major road like Central Avenue?
Right.
But this one is just in a normal little subdivision situation down here. So I like to take this address and then shoot over to Airbnb because you can actually search specific areas, right? Specific addresses. And where it says like check-in dates and check-out dates, just put flexible. And I like this over most other tools, but the thing that is really tough to do with this is like you're not going to know if it's an owner booked or an owner blocked out amount of time. It's just going to give you a rough idea. Okay. So adults, if we have a 3-bedroom house, 2 people per bedroom, low end, we could probably sleep anywhere from 8 to 10. So let me just put like 7 in there, and our time is flexible. So now I can zoom in to my neighborhood and say, okay, well, let's look at other homes in the area, right? This is completely different kind of house. This is a newer house. Mine's a little bit older. And the main thing you see here is they only have 3 reviews. I don't want to use that as a comp. This one here is a newer house, right? Ours looks completely different. I wish it would be nice if there was something like in here, right? So I can't really use these as comps. I got another one over here that only has 5 reviews. So that doesn't give me any confidence. It looks like they've never had a booking and they're trying to charge $800 a night. Don't think that's going to happen. Really, the things that move the needle for many of these properties is going to be a pool. But looks like this apartment is new for $130. This other apartment is new for $150, closer to the mountain down here. So I can confidently say, like, I just don't feel confident enough to say this is a great area for a short-term rental because there's nothing else around, and the things that are, they really just don't have a ton of, right? This one's a modern luxury. Look at this house. Super duper nice house for
I would say
$143 a night.
that this is not your short-term rental property.
Right.
Definitely not. Kind of its highest and best for sure.
Yep. So STR stands for short-term rental, Rita, and MTR stands for midterm rental, right? So that's what that stands for. So if I go back to my iPad now, go back to stop presenting. Here we go. So I could confidently say that this really just isn't an option. Okay. Now let's look at the rest of these. All right. So midterm rents would probably be my favorite because a couple reasons. Phoenix is a hub for pad split. Okay. So there's a lot of properties here that are already in the pad split model. If you guys don't know what pad split is, I'll go ahead and share with you the screen here for pad split. Is basically affordable housing here in Phoenix. So let me do this and this. Okay. So this is what it looks like. You'll see we're down here in South Mountain, right? We're somewhere over here, right? Doesn't like there's any listings near us in South Phoenix. Let's see the closest one they got. Oh, there is. There's one right here. So they're doing anywhere from $210 to $500 a week on this property, which is crazy per bedroom. And this one is roughly $200 weekly for this property as well. Let's see if they have any other photos for this. Not unless this is like this might just be something for their marketing. But either way, like this is what I'd recommend doing with a property like this. I think you could easily charge $200 a week for especially the location itself, for kind of nestled in, like, this is a blue collar area, right? A lot of trades people live down here, close to 202 freeway now. And this is kind of like the hub for most of this stuff. So about $200 a week, worst case, even if it's $190 a week, you do pretty well, because what would actually happen with a house like what we're talking about off Euclid, I go back to the address, is you guys will see this is a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,400 square feet. But what you don't see here is they converted this garage to additional living. All right. So this is what it looks like. It needs to be renovated for sure. But if someone's coming in and looking to do a potential pad split, you can easily convert this into another 2 bedrooms and a bathroom out here. You can turn this laundry room into a bath. Well, it used to be a laundry room. It's not even a laundry room anymore. It's just for storage. So this could be your bathroom, and you can convert 2 more bedrooms. So all of a sudden you take a 3-bed, 2-bath and you turn it into a 5-bed, 3-bath. Still 1,400 square feet plus what was the converted garage / carport area. So that's why for an investor looking to do a midterm rental / pad split, you can run the numbers on this, right? You could do pretty well. So if I went back to here, if we're looking at a midterm rental, which would be in this case a pad split, you're roughly looking at about $190 per week per room. All right. And if you were to convert this at highest and best, again, we're looking at the property, figuring out what's the highest and best for it. We have 5 bedrooms. Well, 5 times 190 is about 900. What's that? $945 a week?
950, right?
Maybe
950?
950.
Can you hear me? Yeah,
Yeah, I
950.
got you. So roughly $950 a week.
So
All right.
3,800
Yeah.
a month.
Times, roughly. We know that there's more than 4 weeks in any given month. It's actually closer to 4.3. But if we just base it off of 4, they would be 13 months in a year. But if we did that, it would equal roughly, what was that, Terry?
$3,800.
Roughly $3,800 a month. Okay. The reason why people love the pad split model, and this one doesn't have an HOA, so we wouldn't have any restrictions behind doing that. So we're in on a deal where it's like, okay, well, maybe the highest and best isn't renting it out for $2,000 a month. Now, for $2,000 a month, I would need to do some renovations, right? Sorry about that. I would need to do some renovations, but not anything crazy. There we go. Frank's getting us our tables for the mastermind. So if I was going to rent it out for $2,000 a month, I'm probably going to spend roughly 20 grand to get the property rent ready. If I'm going to turn this thing into a 5-bed, 3-bath, I'm probably going to spend closer to 45 grand.
Yep.
Okay. But with the difference there, that's $1,800 a month different on doing a pad split. So I'm like, okay, well, maybe that's the selling point. And guys, again, every single one of these things that you see that you could potentially do with a property is just another selling point to your end buyer. Like if you're not going to be doing this yourself, this is a selling point to your end buyer. Does that make sense? Like, hey, this property actually long-term rents, Mr. Investor, Mrs. Investor. Perfect. That justifies a wholesale fee. Oh, this property actually also does really well on pad split if you were to convert the garage area that's already there into just 2 separate bedrooms. You could do a heck of a lot better. Oh, amazing. Sweet. We can do that. And then lastly, it's like, okay, well, I guess you could also look at potentially doing these other 2 things. So a lease option, the reason why someone would go about and do a release option would be to just garner a little bit more money up front, right? And to maybe charge a little bit more money on rent. You can't charge too much because you can imply ownership. This is a lease with an option to purchase down the road. So normally an option fee that you could charge is roughly anywhere from like 8,000 to, you could charge up to 15, but to be safe, about 12,000 as a quote unquote option fee, right? You would retain ownership, but you're renting the house to someone who has an option that they can execute the purchase of the property at a certain price down the road. Maybe that's 3 years, maybe that's 5 years. But you can get this up front, plus you could probably do around $2,150 a month or something like that. Okay. So you're able to get a little bit more money on rent, and you're able to get a little bit bigger option fee. The problem is with lease option is this takes time. Okay. So to find the person that would do that could take you a month, could take you 4 months, could take you 6 months. So normally it's not something that I personally like to do because it just takes a little time to find somebody who has that kind of money. Because typically if they have that kind of money, they would normally go down and do a wrap, right? They would like to buy a new owner finance. So this particular home, we're going in and we're negotiating these terms, right? I know it needs work, but this current homeowner is like, look, I'm done. I want to sell it as is. I'm okay with your subject to offer, right? We are the buyers here. And we say, great. Well, I would like to buy your home, but in exchange, here's the terms of me buying your home. This is in this case, this would be sub 2, right? I'm purchasing this sub 2, and this is my note to buy that, okay? So they're like, great, we'll sell it to you. You give me a note for it. Awesome. And this note, this piece of paper we agree on is our complete purchase. So in this regard, we're giving the seller $7,500 to walk, right? That's 75 at close. We're also giving the agent, what is it? It's 12 grand total. So it's like $4,500, 4,500 to the agent that's involved. And we're going to buy it as is, and we're going to step in his shoes and take over the payments of whatever this is, $1,650 a month, right? I could take these terms, and this term in this certain situation is what the bank calls a mortgage, right? If you're doing this independently, it would be like a promissory note and a deed of trust. But this case, this is secured by the mortgage. That's with the original lender. I can say, perfect. Well, I'll buy this property. I'll take over your payments. This is what I agree to give you to walk away with. This is what I agreed to give your agent. Then I will go take these terms and I will go give it to a family who wants to purchase a home, but for whatever reason, maybe they can't get qualified for a mortgage, and they want a place for their family, and yada yada yada, whatever the situation is. There's a lot of people in that scenario who would love to buy, but they can't get qualified. So instead, I sell to them on owner finance, right? Because I own the home. And I will actually finance these people with a brand new set of terms. So maybe what I would do on these terms, right? This piece of paper, this note and deed of trust, is I'll say, great, well, just letting you know there's debt on the property, disclosing that to you. I'm disclosing that this is what's going on with the property, but this is what I'm going to ask for you guys. I will sell you this property as is, so I'm not going to go do any work to it. I'll give you a little discount because it needs work. I know it's worth $380 fixed up. I'll sell it to you for $350, right? I want you guys to come to the table with $35,000 down, right? So 10%. So they come in with 10% down, and then I will finance the rest at a higher interest rate. So let's just say in this quick number example, maybe that monthly payment ends up being going from $1,650, maybe ends up going to like $2,300. So for $35,000 down, I will owner finance you, and your payment's going to be $2,300 a month, right? Which is still pretty competitive because the area rent's $2,000 or $2,100. And in this example, I would get all my money back from the down payment that I was having to give the agent and the seller. I put that in my pocket now. I would make the cash flow, which is the difference between the $2,300 and the $1,650, and I would make that every month until these people here, this fine family, until they sold or refinanced, which would be somewhere down the road.
Pretty sweet. This is a good route. For sure. I think a couple things you want to look at when you're trying to, if you ever want to go take down your own wrap, or maybe you're underwriting a wrap, a couple crucial things matter the most, of course. That's, of course, you need to get it low. And if you think you got it low, you need to get it lower on the entry fee. And then another thing is your market, right? You know how easy it is to find somebody that's wanting to live and own a home in Phoenix? Way easier than it is in the middle of Texas. Understanding a little bit about your market when you want to take down this stuff as a wrap, more than likely, a lot of times, a home will pencil as a wrap. What makes this one particular property worth a good amount of money on the assignment side of things is it has a multiple different exit strategy, right? So it has the long-term rental route, where worst comes to worst, you're going to put somebody in there and you're going to make a little bit of money, if not break even or make a little bit of money, right? And then you can get the appreciation value down the road. Of course, you could do the pad split route, make a good cash flow on that side of things, or you could also take down and do the wrap because, like I said, with a lot of people moving into Phoenix, a lot of home ownership is a very tough thing to come by in Phoenix. So providing that is great value. So it would be a great wrap as well. So it has a couple different things where it really pencils and really makes some cash flow.
So again, guys, exactly what Terry's saying here is because number one, this property works here, right? And it works here very well. And it works here. And it works here. Someone like buying this property is nice to know. So even if midterm rents didn't work out and you had it pad splitted and all of a sudden you can't rent per room anymore and the city came down with weird regulations, you could always, worst case, go rent it, right? Or you can take it and say, I don't want to rent. I don't want to be a landlord. I just want to be a lien lord. I want to be the bank. I don't want to have to deal with the maintenance of the property. Great. Just go wrap it, right? Or you could go do a lease option and get a little bit more money. But for whatever, you can bounce back around. And because of that, the deal is inherently going to be worth a little bit more. So if we look at our exit strategy playbook, This is how we kind of base off our offer. But when it comes to exit strategies, number one, does it work as a long-term rental? And when it says does it work, it's like, does it at least like break even and make a little bit of money? Is the monthly payment lower, like $300, $350, $400 less than the area rent? Great. It does. Wonderful. We'll move to the left-hand side here of the flow chart. And what you'll find is the more left that you stay, the more the deal was worth. Okay. So how much is the entry, right? Our sweet spot for entry is between 5 and 7%. Always. Doesn't matter how good the deal is, how much it cash flows. I like to stay between 5 and 7% because your buyers who buy these deals and will pay you assignment fees will pay you anywhere from 10 to 15%. So if you don't budget that into your numbers, you're too tight. You won't be able to assign the deals. That's the reason why we know when someone comes in and they're like, well, so such and such is offering me more money. Great. Go give that a shot, because I know they're going to probably have to cancel. That's just the reality of it. Okay. We can be confident because we know that if our numbers fit here 5 to 7, we leave ourselves enough room to get an assignment. Okay. So because we're between 5 to 7%, so this particular deal, what's 5% of 267? 13,350, right? So our entry, we don't calculate for a closing cost. We let the closing cost go to the end buyer. We want 5 to 7% just be the cash that we have to pay the agent and the cash that we had to pay the seller, around 5 to 7%. Okay. If you guys want a title company to close any of these deals nationwide, we got your back. They can do it for rather cheap. It doesn't cost a lot of money to run files through our company that we affiliate with. It's Scott Horn and their team. They actually just really competitive with their pricing. So with that, it's like, okay, well, we're actually less than 5%. Wonderful. The reason why in this case we want to be less than 5%, they're lucky to get what we're giving them, is because it needs repairs. Okay. I normally try to say between 5 to 7% for a move-in ready house. This one I know is going to need repairs, but luckily I have buyers who want to buy more pad splits and they're open to doing these creative deals because it actually cash flows pretty well. So I'll still say, all right, well, let me be around 5%, maybe a little bit less, because it's like,
Right.
it's currently in a condition where it could rent. It's currently in a condition where it's like, if someone wanted it like that, for sure. But with a little bit of work, you can get more out of the property. And, like,
Like I said, I think we would have been a little bit lower if this was a deal anywhere else.
yeah, if this was a
It
deal
would-
in Midwest or in Florida where we didn't have the kind of connections, it'd be kind of tough to move a deal that needed significant amount of work. But
Right.
because we're still working with $100,000 in equity here, even after we do the repairs, the person who'd be moving in and owning this property on creative, it's still going to be, they still have $60,000 in equity if they decide to turn it into a pad split. So that's still a pretty good scenario for them, right? So with that being said, we're like, okay, well, between 5 to 7%, okay, that kind of fits where we're at. Does this work as a short-term rental or midterm rental? The answer is yes, it does work as a midterm rental, not a short-term rental. So we could lease it, is like what I showed you guys. You could lease option it, which I showed you guys. You could wrap it, which I showed you guys. TR, not a thing. You could midterm rent it. And of course, you can wholesale. And when that's the case, you can garner the bigger fees. You start taking exit strategies off the table. You start seeing this list get a little bit less. You can garner a little bit. Not saying you can't sell these deals. You can. You're just not going to be able to get as much money. And if the deals have a high entry fee, your wholesale fee gets pretty tight. Or you're going to have to look at potentially buying it. So the only time that I would break these rules is when I would be buying these properties. Right? If I'm holding on to them, maybe I'd be okay with buying closer to 10 because I'm the buyer. But any other time, you have to stick to these rules if you want the deals to sell. So 5 to 7% is on the purchase price. Okay. So this particular property is not
When it
listed.
comes,
Yeah.
I would say when it comes to creative, number one rule of thumb is if it long term rents, then you're going to be fine. You're going to be able to sell that deal. You're going to be able to probably get an end buyer to give you about 10% or whatever the purchase price is, right? And that includes, of course, down payment, the seller, agent fees, and of course your wholesale fee. Now, of course, if you want to sell and say your property only pencils as a wrap, well, you need to get it below 5% because you're only going to probably be able to get about 7% all in with your fee included of the purchase price to assign a wrap. And also, you got to understand as well, when you're thinking of a homestead buyer and you're wrapping the property, you can't outprice your clients, right? You can't outprice the people who are going to be trying to buy that. And when I say that is your ideal market for a wrap is in your $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 price range, right? Because most of the time, these people are first-time home buyers or people who are bouncing back and looking, maybe they rented for a while after they sold and they want to kind of go down the route of owning again, another try. So you can't get into the 400, 500, $600,000 price range because those people are probably just going to go out and get traditional financing.
Yeah. This
So
works.
you
So again, guys, we talked about this on the creative deal structuring masterclass. When it comes to your underwriting, creative deals work best in cash flow market. Cash flow markets are markets that get close to that 1% rule. So that's your Midwest. That's even in Jacksonville, Florida. You're gonna
Alabama.
move up. Yeah, that's Alabama. That's, Indianapolis. That's Oklahoma City. That's, all these places where properties are worth 200,000 and property rents out for 1,800 bucks. Kansas City, the property's worth 120 and it rents out for 1,200 bucks. My property in Memphis, Tennessee, the mortgage payment 657, the property is worth 95 grand, it rents out for 1,100, right? That's pretty sweet because you're not banking on this properties going up like crazy. Here in Phoenix, you don't get the kind of cash flow, but you get the appreciation because historically over time, the properties here have just gone up faster than the national average. So if you're going to be doing a lot of creative deals, you're going to find that a lot more deals work in your cash flow markets to get close to that 1% rule. If you're looking to do cash wholesaling and get some of those big rips, then you're going to want to be in markets where there is appreciation. Atlanta, Phoenix, Dallas, Orlando, Tampa, Las Vegas, like these places where people are moving, that's where you want to be. You're going to be like, well, there's so much competition. Heck yes, there's competition because there's a lot of people moving there, right? And that's where you want to do your cash deals. So that is your basic underwriting here for this deal off of Euclid. If you just use this flow chart, guys, it'll kind of help you mentally remember. It's like, okay, does it long-term rent? All right, I need to go figure out what the rents are, right? Okay, step one, this is what the rents are, and this is what I got to pay every month on the mortgage. Okay, it could potentially work. Right? How much is my entry? Well, I don't know. They told me to give them an offer. Well, great. I know Matt said we need to be around 5% of the purchase price. They want 300 grand. Then that means I got about 15 grand to work with here to get into this deal, right? That includes me paying the seller and the agent. Wonderful. I need to be somewhere between 15 and 21 grand. Awesome. From there, does it midterm rent or short-term rent? No, this is actually just a property that would be a long-term rental. Great. Well, if I can get it between 5% to 7% all in on a $300,000 house at long-term rents, I'm going to be able to get some money, right? That's how you guys think about these deals. Does that make sense, everybody? Everybody following here?
Matt, did you go over hybrids on your creative master class?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, I always just go back and watch that if you guys are wanting to learn a little bit more about the creative route. Of course, there's gonna be times where there's just a little bit larger equity than your 5%. Then you just have to structure a hybrid deal properly and stuff. And I'm sure, Matt, you already said you went down that route. So go back
Yeah.
and watch that.
So guys, and what Terry's saying is if this didn't exist, if the repairs here didn't exist and the property, they had a PITI of 1650 and they had a PITI of 1650 and they had left on the mortgage was 267
And they were listing.
and they were looking for 380 and it was move-in ready. There was no repairs needed. You got a different kind of deal you got to put together there. Because you're going to want to stay right there at 5% entry, but you're going to have to structure a hybrid deal with the seller carrying all that equity they're keeping in the deal. Right now, he's trading his equity for our offer because the property needs work, right? Because technically he doesn't really have much equity based on the amount of work that he would have to do. So let me show that to you guys, right? So if someone was to buy this house, I'm about to show you guys how to cash underwrite right now, it kind of segues this in perfectly. If he was to sell at 380 minus out selling fees and stuff like that, and he knows he needs $40,000 in work, right? And then by the time a flipper wants to come in and make their profit on a property like this, they probably want to make at least 40 grand. Look, he would be underwater. Their offers are going to come in less than what he owes. So technically, because it needs work, he doesn't have any, right?
Do you want to underwrite it real quick as if it was flip and it's a hybrid just to show them? With this one, of course, we still want to stay around your 5 to 7% entry fee. And then, of course, if the purchase price is 380, and let's just say best case scenario, we get it at that 5%. So now we have $19,000 we can work with, right? Whether that's, of course, going toward. So how I would normally probably present this is $12,000 to seller, $7,000 to agent.
So this is how we're breaking this down before we just run through all these numbers. What Terry's trying to tell you guys is number one, he's saying, all right, well,
this property is
if our purchase price is 380, okay, that 5% number now changes. We'd want to be in right at 19,000. That's where he's drawing that number from. Okay. Right. So now this property doesn't need any work. Yep. the flow chart would be in the course, guys. I'll make sure you have it. So now we say like, okay, well, we know we want to be all in on this deal around $19,000 to close. Well, I like to figure out like, okay, well, if they owe, so 380 is what they like to sell it for. And if they sold it traditionally, this is what they'd actually get, assuming there is literally no repairs. And I subtract out their mortgage. So really they have about 86 grand in equity. Okay. So what we're saying is we want to be about $19,000 all in. And this is going to come out of this number. So really, we're asking the seller to carry about $67,500 with our 5% entry. Now they have a lot more equity. I multiply by 0.93 to take 3% selling agent, 3% buying agent, 1% closing cost is what they would normally cost to sell their property at 380. So they wouldn't walk away with 380, they walk away with 350. Does that make sense?
Find these subject to hybrid deals or more your properties has been sitting for a little while, right? And let's say in the ARV might be 380, but the market's kind of wonky, and they're been getting offers traditionally at 350, 340, right? 360, but they're really focused on getting that 380, but they really need to move on maybe for work or for a bunch of different things, right? Their pain is a little bit different. So of course we're presenting them with an option to where we're able to say, hey, number 380, perfect. We can do that. We can make that work. It just has to be a little bit structured on term. And when you say terms, is of course we're going to come in, take over that monthly payment, and then we're going to figure out exactly how much equity you guys have in this property, and we're going to give a down payment toward that equity number, and then we're going to figure out exactly how much equity you guys have left over, and we're going to work on maybe a payment plan or a structure where you're able to seize that full equity amount.
Yeah.
And that's where we're coming up with this number. I always just like to say,
So we're locking them
might
in
as well show you.
higher price.
Right.
So they're not having to give up their equity to cash out right now. So that's the difference, guys. If they wanted to sell on the market for 380 and they're not getting offers at 380, if it was going to sell for 380, it would already have, right? So that's what they're saying. As it sits longer, they have to really consider what would they actually accept to sell their property. They're probably getting offers around 340, whatever, just like what Terry's saying. But if they sold for 340, then you have to take 7% out of that. So they're not getting 340. They actually walk away with like 315. So the money they put in their pocket right now is like 48 grand, right? Yeah. So about $20,000 less. And what you'll find is there's a lot of sellers. That's a significant amount of money, right? And they don't want to lose $20,000 to sell their home. Instead, they want to lock in a higher price, and they're okay with carrying their equity just so they don't lose it on the sale and have to accept a lower offer, right? So,
yep. And a lot of times you'll have these conversations when it comes to the hybrids type stuff. We've probably done just as many hybrids as we had straight sub two. And the biggest thing is, of course, it has to be a win-win, right? The win for them is they're getting their number. Mm-hmm. The win for them is they're able to get their number, not only get their number, but not have to pay closing costs, right? And a lot of these fees that would come out of that number on top. The con, of course, is staying on the loan, right? So you're going over the pros and cons of doing this when you have this negotiation piece. The biggest thing when you structure a subject to deal when it's more of a hybrid note is the note that you're drafting up in second position. You can't make it to where it would take away your selling points, right? So cash flows is alone.
Yeah. So that's the next piece here, guys. It's like the reason why hybrid deals are difficult. Not only does this person, if this property didn't need any repairs over here and they wanted to lock in this higher price, they're going to have to leave roughly $67,000 in this deal in second position. But the challenge is not only do they have to leave $67,000 in second position, they also can't break our cash flow that's down here. We can't pay them $350 a month on this. We can't pay them $1,000 a month. We can literally give them like $100 a month and then balloon them out in like 10 years. So in like 120 payment, we'll pay them one lump sum, right? So $100 a month times 120 payments, whatever's left of this, which is typically at 0% interest, we'd pay them all out on the 120th payment, right? And that's how they were okay with leaving this kind of deal together. Like we can't pay them because every single dollar I pay them more on their seller equity takes away from our rent. So that's the reason why most hybrid deals fall through. And there's a reason why we don't really target them. If you guys are a student of mine, you know we target 15% or less equity. We'd rather do straight sub two deals because hybrid deals are typically a little bit trickier to put together unless you just have someone who's willing to work it out, like the Scottsdale properties that we got under contract. You know, the guy is carrying $300,000 in equity, but it just makes sense for him, right, to do that.
For tax purposes, a lot of reasons. I mean, you'll find a bunch of different reasons why this would make sense. I would say when you're going to sell a creative deal with hybrid structure, you got to think of on the lines of what a buyer would want, right? So you can't go crazy on the balloon. I see a lot of bad subject to deals that are structured with 4, 5, 6 year balloons. None of those are ever going to sell. And you can't really assign that, right? Because it's
Mhm.
going to take you a long time to get back your money that you invest in that property. So maybe down the road, Matt, we do a higher level, maybe subject to breakdown or something on
Yeah, well, the creative deal structuring masterclass was for that. That's why I don't want to go into crazy detail on all this. You guys can
okay,
go back. It was about 2 hours of creative deal structuring. You can go back
perfect.
and watch. Okay. We went over wraps. We went over all this stuff. You guys can go back and watch that. But when we do quick underwriting, 5 to 7% is where you want to be with your down payment. Then we have to figure out how much equity they have. Ideally, you're structuring straight sub two deals. And the first question you ask yourself is, what would it rent for? Work your way through that flow chart that we shared. Everybody, it'll be in noflufflive.com/masterclass pass. Go ahead and get your login for it. It's completely free. All of our recordings go in there, and the flow chart that we talked about here today will be in there too. So you can go back and watch that. Okay. So now let's really dive into some cash stuff. Okay. So creative, there's your big picture. Seller finance is a lot easier to work with too, because you get to determine your terms with the seller. But let's talk about cash. Okay. So one rule, what did you end up doing? Keep it or sell it. We are going to sell it. We just got it last week, so it's not closed yet. Right. We're going to sell it. I have a buyer who does pad splits, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is great. Because their cash on cash return is insane. When you make $1,800 a month, well, more than that, when you make like $1,200 a month in cash flow, net cash flow. So yeah, their numbers are pretty great on that deal. So what I will look for, guys, when we go to comp cash deals, the quickest way to get burned out of real estate investing and to get out of this industry in general is to do deals that are in the middle of nowhere. Okay. So I'll tell you right now, if you want to have a prosperous business, be in places where the population is 50K plus, please. Okay. Like if you're doing deals in the middle of nowhere, we had some people, we look at deals sometimes and students will even send us deals. I'm like, hey, can we do anything with this? I'm like, that's literally in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma. What am I supposed to do with that? As an investor, what can we do with that? We're looking for population of 50,000 plus. The only exception to this rule, right? The only exception is if you're in a suburb, right? If you're in a suburb and it's just a smaller suburb and there's not a lot of people, like I don't know how many people live in Pflugerville, which is right there beside Austin, but it's not that many people, but people are definitely moving there. It's a good sized suburb of Austin itself. The only exception to this is 50,000 population. This is a suburb of a city, but you want to be careful with that. Okay. Don't get properties in the middle of nowhere. Okay. So when it comes to cash, we have a very simple formula. And if you guys follow this, you're going to be in a good spot. Now, cost of material, this formula I'm going to share with you guys. The only thing that you'll see that will change here in this is your cost of materials. Okay. So if you're in Florida or Arizona, like normally cost of material is pretty similar. Cost of material in the Midwest is a little bit cheaper, but it's still pretty similar, to be honest with you. Where it gets more expensive is like Alaska and Hawaii. So, or California. So if you guys, and obviously Seattle and Washington area, but for the most part, like Hawaii is significantly more expensive for just like a bathtub. It's literally like almost triple the price, right? Same thing for Alaska, especially if you're trying to do flips in the wintertime. No one here really is probably doing that, but I want to let you guys know there are exceptions to this rule. If you were trying to wholesale in Alaska, you better be doing it during the summertime. I saw a property sell for $100,000 more because it had recently poured concrete. And the competition was trying to sell during the wintertime. And guess what you can't do up there during the wintertime? Pour the concrete. Okay. So weird stuff like that. Weird stuff like that could potentially pop up. So just want to let you know. Normally, all of us, we're in the continental states. You won't have to worry about most of that. All right. So when it comes to copying a cash deal, let's check out our sheet here. Let's look at this deal. 4737 West Ardmore Road, Levine. Now, I literally I did any, mini, mighty, mo on Zillow and found this property. So it's not listed. But here's the house. Okay. Here's the house. All right. So 4 bed, 2 bath, 2270. I'm going to go look at the old photos. Let's see when this was probably taken. This was the last time it sold. Looks like it was 2014. So the property probably looks a little different, but has no floors. Has no floors. I'm just going to assume when we do these underwritings, I'm just going to assume the property, they always need work, okay, of some sort. I always assume the worst. And if the
Average condition.
is better than that, then great.
Right.
But your big ticket items are going to be your HVAC. Okay, so we will check out the HVAC. This looks a little old. Like if I was just looking at photos, looks a little old. Landscaping, not the best. Roof looks okay. I didn't see any signs of like needing a new roof. And then like hot water heater is really not that expensive, but it's definitely something to take note of. But the outside looks pretty solid. So the first thing that I'll look at is what could this property potentially, okay, step one, what could this property potentially sell for? Right. Step one, ARV question mark. Everything is based off of this. What is the after repair value? What is the highest and best this property could potentially sell for? Okay. So if I zoom in here to our neighborhood, I know we're like right in here. We had a 4-bed. Let's do this one more time. We have a 4-bed, 2-bath, 2270. Okay. The fun thing about Arizona, guys, is there's a lot of cookie cutter property. So there's a lot that kind of normally you'll find a model match. We have a 6'3", 2900. Don't want to use that one. We have a 4'3", 1900, 2 stories. I don't want to use that one either. Let's see. We got a 5'3", 2038. We have a 4'3", 2056. We have a 3'3", 1943. Terry, what are we looking for? We're looking for apples to apples, right?
Yeah. So out here for sure, definitely in the Phoenix area, 1 story, 2 story is a pretty big difference. People pay roughly the adjustment is about $8,000 to $10,000 more for a single story home. So we really want to bracket the bedroom and bathroom count and how big the home is. And of course, we want to find a 1-story home. Now, with you looking at listing comps, it's wonderful. Listing comps can kind of show you, get you an idea. But the most crucial thing when you're comping a property is your sold comp. And if I was a bank doing an appraisal, you want something sold within the last anywhere below 6 months. In an ideal world, it'd be around 3 months. With where you're at, so you can look at a little bit there. Always understand when you're comping, you want to stay in the neighborhood if you can. Don't cross any major intersections, major streets. Always, instead of broadening the size mileage of your search, just go back in time instead.
Yep.
When you're comping stuff.
So I have a cheat sheet for you guys that I'm going to give to you. It'll be in the actual recordings of this. So when you guys go to our link to get the masterclass pass, again, it's free. All the stuff is, you'll find our cheat sheet that kind of goes over exactly what Terry told you just now. Like the bedroom, bathroom count, the pool, the garage. All we're trying to do is figure out apples to apples. Can we find a property like ours? Sometimes you can't, and you have to do what's called adjustments, right? You have a property that has a garage. Oh my gosh, it's the same square footage and it's a single story home just like yours is, but yours has a carport. Well, great. You can make $1 adjustment based on the value of that garage. We have a cheat sheet for that. It's about $10,000 per garage bay. Okay. If your property has a garage and the best comp has a carport, great. You need to adjust your value up based on it having a carport versus a garage. A carport is worth about $5,000 per bay. Your garage is worth about $10,000 per bay. So if I had a 2-car carport versus a 2-car garage, right? That 2-car carport is worth about 10 grand. The 2-car garage is worth about 20 grand. So I'll make a $10,000 adjustment for my property. Does that make sense, guys? So all we're trying to do is just find a property like ours and make some adjustments if we need to. Terry used the word, he said bracket, means that he'll find something like ours. It's a little bit smaller, find one like ours that's a little bit bigger, right? And kind of make that nice, really right there in the median. For the most part, if you guys can find an exact match, you're going to be in a good place, right? And there's rules. Terry said, don't go out past your neighborhood, right? You don't want to cross major intersections. It's better just to go further back in time than it is to cross major intersections. We don't want to do that. Okay. We want to stay right there with the rest of our houses. I'd rather go back a year to find comps rather than go outside of the neighborhood, right? Even if I like to find stuff in the last 90 days. I normally start with looking at active comps because it gives me a good idea of the market area. But when I can't, especially when the market was like really hot, it gave me a really good idea because property values are going up like literally every time one got took down, there's another one going up more expensive. But right now, sold comps is going to be the name of the game. So ours is a 4.2 2270. Look at this. We have another 4.2 2270, just like our property. And let's look at the inside. Okay. So curbside appeal, nothing crazy, looks okay. Inside, This is nice, right? It's, pretty run of the mill. They got just the tile
Barn door.
floor, nothing crazy. This isn't like really expensive finishings. And look, you don't want to go in here and put like gold finishes and trim and
No.
all kind of crazy stuff when the area does not support that. You got a bunch of properties that look like this. Don't over upgrade your property. Okay. I can look at
This
this
was
and be like,
definitely a
yeah,
good flip for sure.
yeah, this countertop is hideous. They should have went and changed this to something more light, but they came and cleaned it up and just a pretty simple flip. So looking at our property, I know that we're going to need to do work in the kitchen. We're going to need to do floors. We're going to need to do the bathrooms for sure. But honestly, nothing crazy. They kept the old
Not
plastic
crazy.
tub,
Yep.
and they still have the walk-in shower and all that good stuff. So, but nothing, this isn't too crazy, and it sold for 440. That's a good comp. I'll see if there's anything more expensive, but of course, I don't want my comp to be backing this little green belt because the property's worth more if it's backing this in comparison to something that's like inside the neighborhood. If I look at other comps, like this isn't a good one. It's too small, too small. This is similar. So we can take a look at this one and say, okay, this one wasn't really flipped. That tile is not very pretty. So I wouldn't really want to use that. Again, I'm looking for something that's like nice. 4.3. Let's see.
And you'll find some markets, what Matt looked at a minute ago, might be nice in that area, right? You definitely
Mhm.
don't want to over improve your home because you're definitely not going to get your dollar value out that you put into the home.
Right. Exactly. So I wouldn't want to use this one as a comp either. It has an extra bathroom. And if you look at the photos, it backs this big green belt. And I can't tell if it has a
And
pool
it's
or not.
probably built a little bit newer. It's probably new.
Yeah, a little
Looks
bit
like a
newer
new
build.
build.
It's not in the same little
Yep.
subdivision. So I really feel like this 440 is probably our best comp,
Yep.
right? So if we went and flipped our house, that's kind of where we'd be at, right? 4821 would be our comp, right? Cesar, thanks. You put that in the chat. Way to go. That's what I'm talking about, baby. Okay. So now what do we do? What happens next? First, I'm going to turn my iPad back on so I can write some stuff down. And here we are. So step one, ARV. What do we have the ARV at, Terry?
440, right?
Yep, we'll put 440 as a good number. That comp sold in February, so not that long ago. So about 440 would be a good number to base it off of. Now look, when the flipper buys this house, they're going to be like, man, I think I could probably get 450 by the time I sell it,
Right.
But let them handle that. Be conservative with your number, okay? So 440 is the ARV. Now, step two is I am going to, based on the photos, but like I said, I always bank on like, what is it going to cost me to sell, right? Cost to sell. I'm going to put subtract. So right here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply. I'm going to keep this like running math tab over here. 440,000 times 0.93. Okay.
Yep.
This includes, and I'll say it again, guys, this is 3% listing agent. Okay. This is normally 3% to buyers.
In closing
Agent.
call.
Okay. And then this is 1% CC, stands for closing cost. Okay. Now, if you got a discount, on your, your listing fees, maybe you got 2.5%, and then you did 2% closing costs, it typically still ends up being right around 7%. So let's do that math together. 440. Okay, 440,000 times 0.93. We're left with 409,200. Okay.
Yep.
409,200. Okay. That's what we're left with. Okay. Now, step three, we're going to subtract repairs.
Repairs.
So on a property this size that needs to be fully remodeled, again, we just assume that it needs everything. I'm just going to do the adjustment on the actual square footage. I'm going to based on, just assume, again, I haven't looked at the property. I'm going to say about $30 a square foot to get this thing right, assuming I don't have any big ticket items like having to replace the AC, roof, and that kind of stuff. Okay. So if I take the square footage, go ahead.
I would say even for this one where you don't have to just flooring and not really a bathroom rehab, just kitchen, you would still do 30 on that.
Yeah, I'm going to do 30 on this one because I'm assuming the worst. And then if I can get some photos back from the agent or if I go walk the property, I might be able to pay more. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. Because if I just had to do the floors in the kitchen, I would bank on about 45, 50 grand. Right. Yeah. But just for you guys watching here today, repairs, I'm going to go write this down. Okay.
Yeah. So how you normally look at it is like the extent of your repairs, right? So if it's a pretty substantial rehab you'll need, then you want to do the full $30 a square foot. And then you kind of go backwards from there. If it's not as much, maybe the market doesn't need you to bring it up. Maybe you don't need granite countertops. You can do Formica. You can do all these other things. Then of course, maybe it's only $20 a square foot, or
Yeah.
25, just really depending on how much, where your market is and stuff.
Right. So again, if you guys are using the formulas to try to figure out where you need to be for quick math, the more you understand how much stuff costs, the better you're going to be in the flipping game and wholesaling game. Because if you don't understand how much stuff costs, then it's going to be pretty tough to be like, all right, well, I know this is how much it costs to replace flooring and stuff, right? So that's that. But again, as you learn, just do the price per square foot, and you can always go back and learn this stuff later down the road, right? And I'm going to do medium rehab, and I'm going to do a full gut. Full gut is like, I need to take this thing all the way down. We're redesigning the floor plan and doing a bunch of stuff. I do anywhere from like 45 per square foot, especially if I have to do like remediation and stuff like that. Okay. So I assumed somewhere in here for this property. Now, if I can get it cheaper, awesome. We just do a simple lipstick, $20, $25. Okay. So based on $30 a square foot, I took $30 and I multiplied that by 2270, which was the square footage. And I got left with about $68,000 in repairs. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our 409, I'm going to subtract out $68,000. Boom.
Yep.
Okay. So now I'm left with 341.
20.
Right?
Yep.
Let me go ahead.
341.20.
341,200 is my new price. Okay. And again, I'm going to put here is repair. All right. So 341,200 is our new price. Now, step four. Let's figure out what it would cost us to hold the property. Subtract holding costs, right? So I'm going to give you guys a little number here. It's about 10,000 in repairs per week. Now, what that is for every $10,000 it's going to cost me in repairs, that's about a week's worth of time I'm going to have to hold the property. Okay. So if I have $68,000 in repairs in this example, that means I have about 7 weeks to do the project and then resell. And it's going to take me about 60 days to sell. So that's about 2 months. So all in all, I'm probably going to hold this property for seven weeks plus 2 months. So that's roughly about 4 months of me owning this property, rehabbing it, and reselling it, right? So when that's the case, what I would do is your flippers are going to pay, they're going to have to pay hard money, right? They have hard money interest on these deals. So 4 months of hard money interest on whatever they end up purchasing it for, normally this is roughly about, I'm going to say about 15% interest is what they'll pay. And I go high end on this because I want to make sure we budget enough for holding costs. Okay.
All right.
So what is the holding cost actually going to be? Really what it ends up being is their flipper profit. We'll minus out their flipper profit, add back in the repairs and say, this is what they would actually have to pay and raise to do this deal. So if I skip to step 5 here, before I actually calculate what their holding cost is going to be, I may want to go ahead and subtract flipper profit. Okay. Subtract flipper profit. And typically your flippers are going to want to make anywhere from 10 to 15% of sales price. So if we know we're selling for 440, for a flipper to really want to do this deal, they're probably going to want to make anywhere from 10 to 15% of that, okay, on their actual profit side because they're risking it for the biscuit, right? They're the one buying the house. So if I go 440, and let's take the middle number. Let's take 440 and multiply that by 0.125. So just 12.5%. That means in this example, the flipper is going to want to make roughly $55,000 to do this deal, okay, in profit. Sounds pretty good. Promise you, if you don't put in enough flipper profit, no one's going to want to buy the deal. So $55,000 in profit. What I would do here is I'd first, and follow me here. This is where it could I can lose some of you guys. I'm going to subtract $55,000 from this number. Okay. So 341, and this is flipper profit. Okay. And I'm going to take 341 and I'm going to multiply that by, subtract 55,000. Boop. I'm down to $286,000. Okay. That's what's left. $286,000. All right. Now I'm going to go back and say, all right, well, in this number, this is where wholesalers get it wrong. They're like, oh, I have a deal. Why isn't anyone paying me, I'm trying to sell it for 290 and it's worth 440. Why is no one buying it? It's too tight. You're not factoring in holding cost. So what I'll do is I'm actually going to add back in the repairs because they're going to have to pay that out of pocket before they sell, right? Going to add back in the repairs, right? So 286 plus 68,000 means 354,000. So we're back to 354,000. This is what your flipper will need a loan for, right? Very important. I want you guys to understand these numbers. They're going to need to get a loan for about $354,000, right? So if I multiply this by 15%, okay? So if I multiply this by 0.15, which would be their cost for the money, right? That would be their hard money loan, 15% interest only. Well, if I multiply 354 times 15%, it's going to give me a number, which is $53,100. And that's how much interest they would pay. Interest paid over 12 months, right? That's why the lending business is so lucrative. They'll lend you $354,000, but you got to pay them $53,000 in interest over a year. And guess what? You never touch the principal. But guess what? We know that we're not going to hold it for a year. We're going to hold it for 4 months, right? Which is a third of a year. So now I'm going to take this and I'm going to divide this 53,000 by 3. Okay. Everybody following me here? Which is 4 months. Taking that 12 months, dividing it by 3. So I got the 354 by adding back in the repairs. Remember, 286 is what they would end up buying it for, but that doesn't account for their $68,000 they're going to need to do repairs on. Okay. So we add that 286 plus the repairs because that's what it's going to cost them to do this deal, to sell the property for 440. So they're going to look to go get a loan that covers their purchase price and the repairs. Does that make sense? So that's the reason why I add them together and figure out how much would they pay in interest for a combination of those two things, right? I'm going to get to your assignment fee here in just a second. So I'm going to divide this number by 3. That's 17,700. Okay. 17,700. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I know that this is going to be their holding cost, 17,700. You probably haven't seen any other wholesaler or any other person teach you guys this. This is very important. I'm now going to take my 286, this number right here, and I'm going to bring it down, okay? Because I just figured out my holding cost. So now I am going to say, all right, well, I know that our sale price is 440, okay? Subtracted out cost to sell, which is the 0.93, we're down to 409. We subtract out repairs, we're down to 341, 200. We subtract out flipper profit, we're down to 286, right? Now we needed to subtract out holding cost, and holding cost was 17,700. We had to do all this little extra work here, right? This whole area here. We had to do all this extra work to figure out what this holding cost was going to be. So now that I have the holding cost, I'm going to take 286,000, okay? And I'm going to subtract out 17,700, which is the holding cost. So if you guys ever feel like your deals are too tight, it's probably because you're not adding in the holding cost. So it's 200.
If you don't do it right, then there's your whole assignment right there. Sometimes.
Right.
So if you're ever
Your
getting
whole
stuff for
assignment
cash
fee-
for people coming back to you and like, hey, you got to get it lower. Well, probably because you didn't do the holding cost correctly.
Right. So now we are left with a final number of what a flipper would actually pay to buy this property from you is they would be willing to pay right around $269,000. So if you have a property that's worth 440 and you have it under contract for 300, you got it too high. If you got it under contract for 290, you got it too high. If you got it under contract for 280 and you're like, well, my numbers think I can sell it for 290. You got it too high because you didn't factor in the holding cost. Okay. They would actually pay 269. And guess what? You still are not getting paid in this example. All right.
You got to add your fee.
You now got to add in your assignment fee. So you want to shoot for 15,000 and this is your assignment, right? And you're left with your maximum allowable offer, ladies and gentlemen, on this deal is $254,000 is your MAO. Does that make sense? There you go. So this is how you underwrite one of these deals. All right. $254,000 is going to be your offer on this. You take it line by line by line. So step 6, the final step is
your fee.
Subtract your fee. Okay. So ideally, where we could save some money in this deal is it doesn't actually need $68,000 in repairs. It needs 30. Oh, I can now pay $38,000 more than this, which is 292. Guess what? That's still a long way off from 440. If you're like, well, Matt, it doesn't need much work. It only needs like 20 grand. Great. You can still only offer like 300 grand, right?
Correct.
So that is how you roll with this. Now, I see you guys asking some questions on some different types of properties. We'll address that here in just 1 second. But that's how you underwrite your cash deals. Does that make sense, everybody? That makes sense, ladies and gentlemen. Awesome. Well, while I am going to take a quick restroom break. I got a property I want to show you guys real fast. And Terry, I want you to talk through these numbers in your initial thoughts behind it. And I will be back in literally 2 minutes.
All right. So let's see here. Looks like we have a property over here in Phoenix. So first thing I would do is I would just look up the area, right? Kind of like how Matt was doing. Well, this one, everybody go type this in, your address here. One of my monitors, I always pull up the map, and I'll throw the map on one of my monitors, and then I pull up the Zillow listing on the other one. Perfect. So it looks like here we have a home kind of in the same area as we were showing you on the last one. South Phoenix, a little bit right in front of South Mountain. So then we'll of course come over here and look at the Zillow photos. So it's a nice 3.2, 1260 on the square footage. So this one's been flipped, and it looks like there is some debt on the home. Probably not the best interest rate. Probably around the 5 or 6 mark. Looking at that PITI, but that's okay. So what we're trying to look at here is the biggest thing we need to know is of course how much that PITI is, which is $2,050. It only rents out for $2,150, so it really doesn't long-term rent. But they have hardly any equity in this deal. So if they sold traditionally, you go back and said best case scenario, somebody came in at 390 with a traditional offer times 0.93. Of course, they would be walking away after fees and everything's paid for. They are walking away a little bit of money, a couple $1,000. It looks like here. So always good to know that. So they're already on the mindset. They're just trying to move on, more than likely, right? They're going to be walking away with a little less than $3,000. So that's perfect. So in this case scenario, that's of course best case scenario, right? And it hasn't happened yet. Property's still sitting. Looks like this property's been on the market for so it's only been on the market for 9 days, but they're already under the mindset that they're going to walk away with a little bit of money. So they probably need to move, maybe for work purposes or whatever that case may be. Just kind of a pain point for you to remember, and for you to kind of work out. So with this one, the biggest thing is understanding agent fees. Let's say that if the agent's getting that full 3%, let's figure out what 3% of 360 would be. So the agent's going to get roughly a little over 10 grand on this, right? So that's going to be one of your biggest things, is figuring out how you're going to pay the agent out, right? But then kind of going back to what Matt was talking about earlier, remember, does it long-term rent, right? Not really. Doesn't really long-term rent. Okay, shoot. Is it a short-term rental? With this one being in the same area as the last property, probably not a great option there either. You could definitely pad split it, so at least it does work for that route, or it also works as a wrap. Pretty much ideal wrap property. So with that being said, you remember we need to get this thing for next to nothing. We need to go low, and when I say go low, let's see what.
How low can you go?
How low can you go? So let's see what 4% of 361 is. Yeah. So perfect. So it's right around that 15 grand mark, which I said, remember earlier, I said we did 390 in a perfect world traditional sale, times 0.93. They're going to be walking away with about $2,700, right? In this case, we could offer them $10,000 to agent and maybe $4,000 to seller to really get this thing going. And you would still be around that 4% mark to be able to do those other things. So that's kind of where my numbers would look at on this thing. Of course, I don't, with Matt, I don't know how you got this one, but that's kind of where I would try to be at, is handling the agent fees, giving them some moving money, putting them in their next maybe rental or wherever else they're going. They're actually going to make a little bit more money than doing a traditional route. And then of course we're able to kind of get this thing taken off our hands.
100%. So a couple questions as you were going with that. I see where TRS says like, why you say like it's not a good long-term rental is because the long-term rental, the LTR here is 2150. So by the time, guys, property management normally costs about 10% of rent. Okay. So if I was to buy this and had to come out of pocket to buy this property just to go rent it out, I would 100% be losing money every. Okay. So not ideal. on a property like this. If you're buying it for tax purposes to write off some stuff, cool. But you start taking stuff off the table. One of the biggest things is the thing that's been around for as long as America's been around, which is renting out property. So you take that off the table and you're kind of left with a very risky proposition of what you could potentially do with the deal. Again, we want to think about each deal as like its own little business, right? And if my business only works during the winter time or during the summer months and I got to sell to a specific group of people, it's a lot more risky than, selling something all year round, right? You see what I'm saying? So ultimately, this
Initially, we
deal,
want to leave ourselves a little buffer, right? Is like kind of like you're saying there with the long-term rental number. So whatever
Mhm.
the PITI is and whatever the long-term rental number is, you want to leave yourself anywhere between 350, 450 amount of gap there, and that covers, of course, maybe down the road you have to get a new hot water heater, or maybe you, like you said, you got to pay management and stuff like that. That'll make it where it's still cash.
100%. So what I want you guys to think about. So here's the flow chart again. Does it long-term rent? No, right? How much is my entry? I need to be in this thing pretty low, like what Terry's saying. And then from there, I can ask myself, as like, okay, well, it's really only a handful of things I could do that doesn't rent. Town takes the lease option off the table too. So either it's going to be a short-term, midterm, or it's going to be a wrap. One of those three things. And if it doesn't work as a short term or midterm and it only works, which it doesn't work for these things, only works as a wrap, then you need to make sure your monthly payment isn't too high. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to sell it on a wrap. And when does this happen? Let's just say on our property here, we're using as an example, and not to make this too confusing, guys, but the property that we're using here as an example, the monthly payment is $2,050 and the rent's $2,150. So $2,050 on a $360,000 mortgage is a really low interest rate. Okay. If that interest rate was 5 or 6%, that payment would be like $2,900, $3,100, somewhere around there. And at that point, it's impossible to wrap the deal because you can't charge much more than $3,100 a month for someone to live in this house. So it doesn't make sense as a deal. So you want to make sure that your monthly payment is still affordable, because if it doesn't work as a short term or midterm and it only works as a wrap, and all of a sudden that payment's too high because the interest rate isn't good, it's no deal. That's what we have here in the flow chart, and that's what we're explaining. So on the one that we're showing here, even though we can get this property for super cheap, it has to make money in some capacity. Okay. So what I want you guys to really think about when it comes to these types of deals is I want you to not even worry about purchase price. We can tell out of the gate that this person does not really have much equity. Like what Terry was saying, we take
$362,700. So, like I said, they're going to be walking away with what
with no
hard
money, because by the time you,
$1,700.
well, like
You
HOA
know,
transfer fee and all this other stuff
right.
is like they walk away
But
with
this one
nothing.
also doesn't have an HOA, so that's why you could also maybe pad.
Right. So let's just call it 362 after cost to sell, right? We see that they literally have no equity. So if they sold it at 390 today, they're not really expecting to walk away with much money. And that's important. And the reason why we do that is because I don't even want you guys to get stuck on the purchase price. Don't even worry about the purchase price. The thing that you have to think about is, how much do they want to walk with? Okay. 390 is a number they put out there because they know they're going to have to cover cost, because really they're hoping to walk away with 1,000. When we work creative deals, we work in reverse. We know we're going to take over your mortgage. Let's give you $1,000. Let's give you 5,000. Let's give you whatever. We know we're going to have to pay the agent on this deal, right? So all in, we couldn't be any more than like $16,000 maybe,
Right.
So maybe a little bit more, but we're going to have to pay the agent 10 grand and maybe give the seller some cash, but like they're going to make more money on doing sub two than what they would otherwise. But guess what? If we knew we came to the table with 15 grand to pay agent and seller, well, we're not paying this. We're not paying 290. We're paying 361 plus 15 grand, right? Which is in actuality, we're buying the property for 376. Okay, would be the purchase price. Does that make sense, guys? But the sellers are not going to give you a pushback, because the only reason why they're trying to get 390 is so they don't come out of pocket in these examples. Okay, but if we can keep our entry fee low enough and it works, those are other extra strategies like midterm rental, short-term rental, or potentially a wrap, because the monthly payment's $2,000, the rents are $2,150. I could probably charge someone $2,800 to live in this neighborhood. We have a good chance of making this deal work and make some money on it.
You could
But
probably sell this thing for about 25,000.
yeah,
So that means you would be probably you want ideally get about $10,000 on that assignment fee, right?
yep.
So that's
Mhm.
a lot of times the more and more you do these things, the more and more you understand what you're looking at. When it definitely comes to creative, you'll kind of get really good at understanding exactly what somebody will pay you for a deal. And then you kind of work your way backwards, right? The better you negotiate, the more assignment fee you're going to get from that number.
Right. And that's the reason why we can be so confident when they're like, hey, we got other offers, so we're going to wait and we're going to go with someone else. Like, great. Well, I don't think anyone's going to be able to pay more than what we're paying because they're going to make $0 on this. And we're in real estate to make money. So, I mean, good luck. Right. That's the main thing. So,
For sure.
that's how much do they want to walk away with? That is a big paradigm shift. You even do that with cash. There's been so many examples of me sitting in someone's living room, the property's worth 400, and they're like, well, I want 300 grand, right? And I'm like, well, okay, well, how much do you owe? Do you have a mortgage on the house? Yeah, I owe like $200,000 on the mortgage. Okay. So after this, like, what's happening? You're going to buy another house? No, I remember this guy's like, I'm going to get an RV. I already got a place up north. I'm just going to renovate it. Okay. Well, how much do you need to put in renovation? You're going to spend all your money on renovations? No. I'm going to put some money in that. And then I'm going to pay off some credit card debt. Okay. Wonderful. Well, how much credit card debt do you need to pay off? I have about 20 grand I need to pay off. So I'm focusing on what they're going to be doing with the money. Like, what does the money do for you? Right. So really it's like 20 grand in credit card debt plus 30 grand in renovations for your other house, plus some moving costs. You don't need $100,000. You could probably do all this for like 60, right? So I'm like, well, if I'm able to help you pay off your credit card, renovate the house up north, and you're able to get some moving money, like 60 grand. If I can make sure you walk away with 60 grand on the sale, what needs to happen next? And they almost negotiate against themselves. And they're like, can't tell you how many times someone's like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's do it, And next thing you know, you got a price drop of $40,000 just by focusing on what someone wanted to walk away. Make sense? Cool. As you go back through these recordings, try to do these properties again. Watch how we did it. Watch how we did our numbers behind it. And I want to challenge you to see if you can come up with something similar and start looking at deals this way, because you follow this framework behind underwriting these deals. Obviously, cash is this one. You understand all 6 steps. You can run a deal through this 6 steps like within 2 minutes. It doesn't take a lot of time. And the same thing on creative. If you follow the flow chart and you get used to looking at deals that way, you will be able to underwrite them in a matter of minutes as well. This does not need to take 30 minutes to underwrite a deal. But if you just follow these steps, I promise you, it becomes really stinking foolproof. You always have to think what you could do with the property as you take things off the plate, as you start saying, well, we can't do this with this property. Again, think about a business that only sells one thing, that only sells to a very specific person. It's not worth near as much as someone who already has established business making way more money. That's how these houses go. You start taking things off the plate, it's just worth less money on the assignment. Okay. So I saw some interesting things in the chat that I wanted to make sure that I at least addressed on this underwriting masterclass. I feel like I can have a whole masterclass just on single family. I can have a whole masterclass just on multifamily. But when it comes to anything less than 4 units is not technically considered multifamily, but I will still look at each one as individual unit. Okay. Depending on the class of the property, which is important. Like if you're in a bad area, of course, you're going to be able to have higher cash flow numbers, but you also have to understand what comes on the back of that, which is the type of people you got to collect rent from and the turnover and the evictions and how they treat the properties and all that stuff. So Brian says, is this the same process when comping for multifamily 4 units or yet less? When I look at a quadplex or a triplex or a duplex, I will look at what is the income potential from each individual unit. It doesn't have to, and normally it's not that different than your single family home. But you'll find that, you have typically it runs anywhere from $70,000 to $110,000 a door when it comes to that specific class of property. So what you'll also find is you get really close to your 1% rule on those types. It's the reason why we love doing them on creative finance. Okay. If you were going and buying a 4-plex with cash, then you'll base it off of what is the potential of this property, right? So if I'm buying a 4-plex, I'm going to take off my normal selling fees and that kind of stuff. But more importantly, I'm going to say, all right, well, what is this property currently bringing in per month, right? I want to look for units that need to be renovated, okay? And I want to look for units that are sitting vacant, okay? And I want to look for tenant units that are currently being rented less than market rent. Because if I can have a combination of those 3 things, I'm going to have a good chance to be able to raise those rents, right? And get more for the property because it is its own individual thing. So a lot of times what you'll find is you got a lot of mom and pop people who own these 3 or 4 plexes. And to be honest with you guys, in multifamily, go big, then go bigger and go bigger again. You're going to do the same amount of work that you would on the 3-unit triplex. than you would on a 20 unit. Just saying. And the capital raise is still very similar if you plan on keeping these deals. But more specifically, we're looking for value add opportunities. So I would comp the property based on what it's currently at, right? And what the rents are. So if the rents are, and we work our way back from capitalization rate. Who here knows what cap rate is? Who here knows what cap rate is? Let's go. So word for cap rate, put it here on the screen. So your cap rate is calculated by dividing a property's net operating income by its asset value. Okay. So a lot of times, if we don't know how much the asset could be worth, we'll base it off of a target cap rate, right? And we'll also look at what the asking price is of the seller. So let's just say we have, you know what? I'm going to try to draw this out for you guys. Back on my iPad here. I have to turn it back on. So let's say we have ourselves, I'm going to put multifamily, and this is a very ultra small version of a multifamily at a 4 unit. But let's just say we have our building here that has our 2 doors, and you have, upstairs. Just say this is a fourplex, okay? And let's say the fourplex, we know the income every single month is they're renting each one out for $750 per month. And what I personally like to look for, guys, is there at least 2 bedrooms, right? When you're working with studios, it can be a little bit more tough, right? But I'm looking for stuff that's at least 2 bedrooms. So ideally, you have a fourplex that's 2 ones, right? Or 3 ones or 3 2. Probably not going to see 3 2s, but you see at least 2 ones. So let's just say they're renting out for $750 a month each, right? And let's just say, the tough part about the reason why we care about the trailing 12 is called a T12 or the NOI, which stands for net operating income. T12 is another word for your trailing 12 months. So what has it been over the last, since we're already a quarter into the year in April, give me the last 12 months of income on this property, right? And then you can also give me your net operating income from last year. My valuation is based on the net, right? If I had a business that was doing $1 million a year in revenue, but it cost me $990,000 to make that $1 million, the business isn't worth $1 million. It's worth some multiple of $10,000. Does that make sense? So I need to know how much the property actually nets. So if I take $450, if I know it rents out for $750 a month, and I need to get my net operating income, and oftentimes you're working with older folks who don't have these numbers. Ideally, they at least have the trailing 12 saying, give me at least tell me what you guys made over the last 12 months. So if I say, let's go back to my calculator, and let's say $750 a month, and let's multiply that by 4 because it's 4 units. They make about $3,000 a month. And let's say that's times 12. That's like $36,000 a year, assuming they had 100% occupancy, which on these kind of units is very common. They've had people in there for a long time with lower rents, and they have to pay for maintenance and water and some other stuff like that. So I'll subtract out the cost for the metering and all that other stuff. So let's just call it 30% is what I'll have to take off the top. So let's just say the net operating income of this property was about $25,000. Okay. So I'll look at my net operating income, and I'll see last year, the person who owned this made about $25,000 net. Okay. Well, if they made $25,000 net, I will say okay, well, what's the potential here? Well, if I go in and I renovate these units and I make it look really pretty, I evict the people that are there, and I spend about $20,000 per unit, I think I can get closer to $1,100 a month, right? In value add each, right? So that significantly impacts what our cap rate is going to be on this deal. So we'll look at, okay, well, currently, if we say, all right, this seller is looking to sell his fourplex for $360,000, right? He's like, I want $360,000. You know his asking price, and you know what the current rents are, right? And you know what their net operating income. Well, I'll say, all right, well, $360,000. Right here, this year, if you got it. He's asking $360,000. I'll tell you guys, with these types of properties, you get into luxury stuff, you don't get the same returns. You want to kind of be right there at around $100,000 a door for what they're asking. So let's just say they're asking $360,000. Okay. Well, I'm going to take my $25,000 and divide by 360,000, and I get a cap rate of 6.9%, right? So all I did was I divided this by their asking price, right? Which gave me a current cap. They're selling currently at a 6.9% cap rate, right? Well, what's the potential of getting this up? Because ideally, I'd like to negotiate down the price to get a better cap rate right out the gate and have a better opportunity down the road to have a better cap rate. So if I said, okay, well, if the comps in the area, guys, and I can justify this saying, all right, well, this is what he's selling for currently. This is what I could get it to. Well, if I was able to get it to $1,100 a month and people are buying around 7% cap rate, which is pretty typical, well, then with a simple value add, what would this property be worth? Well, $1,100 a month, assuming that the cost stays around the same, about $10,000 a year. And that's a little high for maintenance, but I'm just going really high. But here, if I take $1,100 a month and I multiply this by 12, okay, 1,100 times 12 times 4, because we have 4 units, that's $52,800 a year minus your $10,000 it was 11,000. We went high on it in maintenance. So you're netting 41,000 with just putting $20,000 per unit. The income potential here is $41,800 net per year. Okay. And if we base it off a 7% cap rate, okay, I can simply go through. So the calculation is again this, guys, right? Cap rate equals your NOI divided by purchase price, right? Or valuation. So if you, on the flip side, if you divide your NOI by your cap rate, you can get your purchase price. Okay. So if I divide 41,800 by 0.069, all of a sudden, once I renovated these units, if I was to keep it at a 7% cap rate, I'd probably give this person a better deal. But this property could project to be worth, once fully renovated, looks beautiful, it's super nice, it's been rented out. Someone who's like a hedge fund would come in and buy, this property could potentially be worth $605,797 based on this, right? Based on the rents being at that 7% cap rate. All right. So all I did was I divided NOI by cap rate to get the purchase price. You can manipulate these numbers. You guys remember when in math class you said, oh, I'm never going to need to know this remember this in real life? Well, this is what you're doing here. You're solving for the missing variable. Okay. So to get the NOI, I would simply take cap rate. If I didn't have the net operating income, but I had everything else, I could take cap rate and multiply it by purchase price. If I was trying to figure out purchase price, I could take the NOI and divide by cap rate. If I had a target cap rate that I was going after, if I had someone who's like, look, I'm looking to buy 4plexes, I'll buy at a 7% cap rate. They need to be renovated. No, I don't need a value add. Like I'll buy market ready properties at 7% cap rate. Well, then you know what you could potentially get property, right? Ideally, you're able to get this property to a much better cap rate than 7%, get it closer to 10 to 12, and you sell it to someone, even at 10 to 12, like you're looking at a pretty substantial profit here. So you put $80,000 in this property, you got it rented out, you're all in for $440 plus some change, and you're able to sell it for $605. That's about $130,000, $120,000 net flip for you. Okay. So to make it simple, guys, when it comes to multifamily properties, I can put my face on here. When it comes to multifamily properties, it always comes down to where am I at and where could I be? It's like, again, it's flipping a business. That's all you're doing. Hey, your restaurant doesn't have any marketing. Your food sucks. There's no reviews online. No one can find you. Great. And this is what you guys are making. The staff is terrible and there's no leadership and no structure. Wonderful. Well, I know if I can go fix these things, ideally we make more money per month. And if I make more money per month in the restaurant, when do you like what would be worth more money, the restaurant now or what the restaurant could be worth once everything is set up and we're bringing in 4 times as much money per month? It's 100% worth way more money like that. So that's what they do. A lot of time, that's what we call value add. Ideally, I personally think the sweet spot in doing multifamily is anywhere between 12 to 40 units is like my favorite, because you're going to do the same amount of work that you would for the fourplex. The deals are bigger, the profits are bigger, and typically you're still working with the principal. Okay. On a separate training, guys, let me know if you guys want to do a bigger training on multifamily, let me know, because I could spend another 30 minutes talking about the IRR, which is your internal rate of return, and how to go raise private money for this. The great thing about when you go do these deals, I personally do not recommend doing them with cash. I'd rather do this all day on creative and do a $360,000 note with a seller with a 10-year balloon, like that kind of stuff. We can get into some really crazy numbers here, but I can show you guys how all this stuff works. But ultimately, normally, most of you here, if you're watching today, you're starting up here in the single family world and you're doing creative on single family, you're doing cash on single family to do either wholesaling or fix and flipping or buying some single family homes. I'll tell you right now, if you're looking to build your portfolio with creative, you might as well just go multifamily if you're in the mode of building your portfolio. And that is just a few people. If you're in the mode of making money, okay, if you're in the mode of making as much money possible for the next year to 2 years before you start building your portfolio, don't even worry about it. Just keep doing your thing, right? And we can add the multifamily into it. So yeah, absolutely. We're going to share this replay, so don't even worry about that. If you guys missed the link, it's Masterclass Pass. Okay. So if you go to noflufflive.com/masterclass pass, I'll also post it into Facebook groups. You'll see it there. Click on it. You'll get a login to the online course. All these recordings are going there with the resources for them too. Okay. So the resources that we discuss here, like, hey, the flow charts and the other stuff, they're all going in that course. I think you guys are going to love it. So if this is any interesting at all to any of you guys and you need help comping properties, you feel like this is your biggest sticking point. We talk to a lot of people that you're like, you're good at generating leads and then you're afraid of like messing up the deal and underwriting them and whatever. Like that's a big part of it, in my opinion. Like a lot of people get good at generating leads and then you're trying to figure out how to do sales and how to negotiate, but then are your numbers any good and having someone to bounce it off of. Literally, this is what we do, guys, every day. Terry, this morning at 9 o'clock, what'd you do?
We had an hour and a half long Zoom with everybody that's in our mentorship, help them underwrite deals, talk about creative, talk about different angles of how they should approach different deals. We underwrote some cash stuff. We actually called some agents on there as well. So we really just try to help everybody with the acquisitions of different properties, whether it's cash, whether it's creative, and kind of walking everybody down each path that they need to go down.
100%. So this is what Terry does every morning with Jake at 9 a.m. I'm in there obviously with what I do with office hours, but like if you feel like you're stuck with underwriting and you need more support, like use this link right here. Let's hop on a call and we're happy to help any way we possibly can. Guys, like we do have a mentorship. You know that if you're probably watching this, it's not cheap. It's $7,800. But at the end of the day, if we can help you, we want to help you, right? You like the reason why we do these master classes is for that reason. Like I want you guys, everyone in our world, I want our Facebook group freaking popping off. I want us to have like the most valuable Facebook group out there, like our free Facebook group, No for Real Estate with Matt Beard. I want it to be the best. I want you guys doing deals with each other. I want you to like communicating in the chat and connecting with each other. It's not about me. It's not about Terry or anyone. I want you guys to be equipped with this information to go do something with it. If you need help working with someone, like, so you want someone to work with you and make sure you're getting this stuff done, you want accountability and like a business coach and, you know, someone to actually break this thing down with you as you grow your business, then sure, you should probably join the mentorship. But like there is enough here for you guys to rock and roll. And we will continue to give as much as we possibly can on these trainings until y'all tell us to stop, but we ain't going to stop. Right. So again, if you guys go to noflufflive.com/masterclass pass, you can get all the recordings. This one will be up there probably tomorrow. If you need help, use this link. Again, we do these trainings for you guys and we're always here to help. If you're missing any of the recordings, go to noflufflive.com/masterclass pass. So guys, we're here to support you with everything that we do. As always, thank you all for joining us here. Appreciate you all. We'll see you on our next masterclass. Thank you all so much.